My name is Bertie Ahern and you're listening to the Ireland Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Ireland Podcast. This is Fender Jackson. The time is 2:40 on Wednesday the 8th of July 2026. I am in the headquarters of the Irish News with this person. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm John Manley. I'm Political Correspondent with the Irish News.
John, thanks again for meeting me. It's a sign of the times that we're meeting so close. And I wanted to talk about what's been happening in Northern Ireland with particular reference to DUP and more closely maybe Jeffrey Donaldson to understand his place in the world of politics here. Just as a heads up, about 8 or 9% of the listeners of the Ireland Podcast are in Northern Ireland, so we're reaching a global audience, so there's a fair bit of education to go along the way, I'm assuming. So if we can start with the start with DUP, explain who they are and what's their history up until roughly today.
Okay, the DUP was founded it's a Unionist party. It was founded in the early 1970s as a sort of reaction to the Ulster Unionist Party, which had been the main and mainstream Unionist party, which had governed Northern Ireland essentially from its inception in the early 1920s. The DUP was critical of efforts by some may see them as token efforts, but they were perceived by the DUP as efforts to reconcile or to give concessions to the nationalist community following the civil rights movement and calls for greater allocation of housing, jobs and things, and political representation to members of what was then the minority nationalist and Catholic community. The DUP then, it was led by the Reverend Ian Paisley, who himself was a founder of the Free Presbyterian Church. So the Free Presbyterian Church is a fundamentally Christian denomination. It is informed by biblical teaching, and therefore lots of the DUP's ideology was informed by biblical teaching. It intertwined politics and religion, very sort of anti-papist, but also very anti-Republic of Ireland, which was dominated by the Catholic Church at the time, anti-European. That was essentially its ideology. So, and very, as I say, a very conservative ideology informed by the Bible. So we fast forward to 1998 and the Good Friday Agreement. The Ulster Unionist Party still remained the dominant party within Unionism at the time, led by David Trimble, and it negotiated the peace accord, the Good Friday Agreement.
So the Ulster Unionists were in opposition to the DUP?
Not so much in opposition. The two parties ran in parallel and at times cooperated. For example, with the 1985 Anglo-Irish Agreement, which gave a greater say in the affairs of Northern Ireland to the Dublin government. Both the Ulster Unionist Party and the DUP were opposed to that, and they cooperated in their opposition. They would have boycotted, councils and different things, and forced various elections through their abstentionism at the time. So then we go to 1998, when the Ulster Unionist Party negotiates, is the lead Unionist Party, led by David Trimble, and it negotiates the Good Friday Agreement. The DUP did not support the Good Friday Agreement, nor, it's worth pointing out, did Sinn Féin at the time. Neither the DUP then would have campaigned against a yes vote in the referendum. Sinn Féin didn't campaign actively. That referendum was passed, I think, with like a 70% majority in the north to accept the Good Friday Agreement. But there was still a lot of opposition within Unionism to the agreement. A lot of this based around the failure of the IRA to decommission and to halt its activities entirely. So what you found, you know, the DUP was very much a thorn in the side of the Ulster Unionist Party, and there was a lot of internal dissent within the Ulster Unionist Party. Just prior to the agreement, this is where Jeffrey Donaldson comes into play. Jeffrey Donaldson was a member of the Ulster Unionist Party, but was a critic of the particular element of the Good Friday Agreement which saw early releases for prisoners convicted of Troubles-related offences. And just, you know, in the 11th hour, Jeffrey resigned from the Ulster Unionist Party and became an independent for maybe 9 months or so before joining the DUP. He would have left the Ulster Unionists alongside Arlene Foster, someone who was later to become a leader of the DUP. Jeffrey Donaldson was, when there was double jobbing, he would have been an MLA at Stormont and was a junior minister for a while, but he concentrated most of his activities in London. It's worth pointing out that Jeffrey Donaldson, he came into politics. He's from Kilkeel in County Down. He's a member of the Orange Order, a member of the Presbyterian Church, and first entered politics around age 19 or 20 when he became a parliamentary assistant to Enoch Powell. Enoch Powell had been thrown out of the Conservative Party years previous and became a member of, I think in 1974, became a member of the Ulster Unionist Party and was MP, successfully won the Westminster seat for South Down, my own constituency. Jeffrey was his parliamentary assistant, as I say, up until 1987, when that seat was taken by the SDLP's Eddie McGrady. And that was essentially the end of Enoch Powell's political career. Jeffrey then moved very smoothly to become assistant to James Molyneux, the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, and a confirmed bachelor, it must be said. So, just to point out, there have been rumours and some published articles, though not in the mainstream media, that focus on suspicions that both James Molyneux and Enoch Powell were at best closet homosexuals and at worst child abusers. I'm able to say that because both gentlemen are dead.
Wow. I didn't expect you to say that sentence. I've been out of the loop a bit, so you're educating me in as much as the audience. So explain about how Jeffrey rose to power within the DUP. Well,
Jeffrey was always a powerful figure in the DUP. Intelligent, articulate, always very calm and measured compared to a lot of his party colleagues. Rarely did he, engage in sort of, inflammatory rhetoric or inflammatory sectarian rhetoric. So he was seen as this sort of nice boy of the DUP, often compared, because there is a physical resemblance and a resemblance in mannerisms to Daniel O'Donnell.
I was about to say, whenever he was coming up, I used to get the two of them mixed up.
Yeah.
Whenever they came on TV, it's like, which one's that? Yeah.
Okay, so Jeffrey, but at the same time, so he was latterly, from maybe, I'm guessing from 2014 or so, he was chief whip of the DUP's parliamentary party. I think there was a time when they had up to 10 MPs, if I'm not mistaken. So Jeffrey would have been the chief whip in following the 2017 Westminster election, when there was a hung parliament and the Tories had to negotiate a confidence and supply deal with the DUP, it was Jeffrey Donaldson who negotiated on behalf of the DUP. Then we fast forward to 2021, I think it was, when there was a heave against Arlene Foster. There was frustration within the party over various things she'd done and personality clashes and different things. And ultimately, Arlene Foster was forced out. And Edwin Poots then became leader. Now, Edwin Poots in many ways represented the remnants of the Free Presbyterian wing, whose influence had been declining. We haven't mentioned Peter Robinson yet, but Peter Robinson was leader of the DUP.
So this is almost like a civil war within the same party, where you have Dr. Paisley's camp, who is more Free Presbyterian.
Yeah, I think it's over-egging it maybe to call it a civil war. There's a tension there between the secular elements and the religious elements, but even the secular elements would always pay a degree of lip service to that. They would have shared those conservative opinions, that they just necessarily weren't grounded to the same degree in biblical teaching. So it enabled them a bit more flexibility, I suppose, I must also add that in about 2000, the early 2000s, shall we say, because there was a Westminster election and then an Assembly election, the DUP ultimately eclipsed the Ulster Unionist Party as the largest Unionist party, and then went on with that mandate to agree the St Andrews Agreement, which was basically a tweaking and an updating of the Good Friday Agreement, which then enabled the DUP to enter power sharing with Sinn Féin. Okay, that was about, I think when that eventually came about 2007, when Ian Paisley became First Minister and Martin McGuinness became the Deputy First Minister. That would have lasted for a couple of years. And then again, there was internal dissent. A lot of hardliners within the DUP didn't like how Ian Paisley behaved in public with Martin McGuinness. This man was once seen as public enemy number one and an adversary of the DUP, yet Ian Paisley, they were nicknamed the Chuckle Brothers, and the pair of them could be seen joking. And it did later emerge that they had developed quite a close friendship. So Ian Paisley was replaced in the DUP by Peter Robinson. Then in 2016, Peter Robinson was replaced by Arlene Foster. Then subsequently, Arlene Foster is replaced by Edwin Poots. But Edwin Poots' leadership only lasted about a month before, it was a crazy period during politics. I think we'd just come out of the pandemic. But also, you found for the first time ever that internally the DUP was briefing against its own leader. I can remember one well-placed figure within the DUP, telling me that, when things were starting to go wrong for Edwin Poots, that the wheels were coming off the clown car. Okay, so Edwin Poots then resigned as leader of the DUP and was replaced by Jeffrey Donaldson, who was at the time seen as a safe pair of hands. I believe Edwin had defeated Jeffrey in a leadership contest. But once Edwin stepped down, Jeffrey came forward and emerged and brought, shall we say, a degree of stability to the party. So then he oversaw, I think it's 2022, the DUP in protest at the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is the post-Brexit trade arrangements put in place by the EU and the UK government. The DUP boycotted the Stormont institutions, and then, and we're negotiating with the Tories, which was, initially Boris Johnson, then Rishi Sunak, No, then Liz Truss, and then Rishi Sunak, and they came up with a document called Safeguarding the Union, which was enough to get the DUP back into Stormont. Now, there were many internal critics who believed the Safeguarding the Union document was just a whitewash and there wasn't anything in it. But there was an eagerness amongst the DUP's ranks and their MLAs whose pay had been cut by the Secretary of State to get back into Stormont, okay? Because they were getting in their ear from their constituents and they were probably getting in their ear from their bank manager who's telling them their bank balance isn't especially healthy and they could do with being full salaried. So DUP went back into the executive in the end of February 2024. Okay, so then just a matter of weeks later, on Good Friday 2024, a story broke that Jeffrey Donaldson had been arrested by this time it's important to point out, he is Sir Jeffrey Donaldson.
What was that knighthood?
That knighthood was for services to politics. It was bestowed on him by Queen Elizabeth, I think, in 2017 in her birthday honours list.
But why did he get it and others didn't in the North?
Well, I think because he's seen as was regarded as a safe pair of hands, and as all those things I've said previously, measured, reasonable, not controversial. Wow. Okay. Now, the only one thing I can point to before that was in the expenses scandal, which I think goes back to around the 2010 or whatever. I think the Daily Telegraph revealed that Jeffrey Donaldson had been claiming for movies, and when he's staying in a hotel, he was claiming for movies on the and the taxpayer was footing the bill for these movies that he was buying.
Is this where the Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe?
This is the one. He claimed at the time he'd been watching the Chronicles of Narnia. And
great
Star
movie.
Wars.
Great movie.
Well, I'm not a fan of either, I have to say, Fender. Okay?
But the choice, not the choice, the allegation is that he was actually watching adult content.
Well, it was nothing more than a rumour.
Okay.
Or people surmising, wondering what a man who would have been, in his late 40s at the time was doing, watching children's films, or family films in his spare time. Now, there was nothing, perhaps the Telegraph had information, so nothing more than a rumour persisted, okay? But it's quickly forgotten, it has to be said. Also, rumours circulated a couple of years later that he was living with his gay lover in Dromore, which is where he lived. He moved from Kilkeel some time ago and moved to Dromore. Again,
but he's married at this stage, yeah?
He is married, yes. He's been married to Eleanor, Lady Eleanor Donaldson, as she was for the best part of 30 years.
But I think you have to explain here the context of why that's so controversial in Northern Ireland.
Well, the DUP and even the Ulster Unionist Party wouldn't be especially sympathetic to what has become known as LGBT rights. His previous party, the Ulster Unionists, would have been less outspoken and would have had openly gay members in its ranks. The DUP less so. Famously, Iris Robinson, who herself was embroiled in another scandal where she had I think she was in her late 50s, and it turned out she had a lover who was in his teens. Iris Robinson had referred to homosexuality as an abomination. I think Ian Paisley has said similar things. Ian Paisley Jr., that is the son of the DUP founder, who himself was succeeded his father as a member of Parliament. And Jeffrey Donaldson, and see, I have to say, Fender, I was never aware of his pronouncements on homosexuality, and I didn't, and on Christianity. They wouldn't be things I would have sought out, or some of this stuff has come to light retrospectively.
Yeah.
But for example, I'm not going to go and watch a video where Jeffrey's being interviewed about his faith.
However, Abomination made the headlines, but
Yes.
then it made the headlines a lot, I think, because of what Iris Robinson had been up to, in terms of.
Well, it made the headlines initially simply because that's what she was saying,
Yes, yes.
about
So he didn't say anything to that extent. Donaldson didn't say anything to that extent.
No, but he did vote against same-sex marriage.
Okay.
And I believe would have made pronouncements against same-sex marriage and same-sex relationships.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of criticism of journalists, collectively in the aftermath of his conviction. And I might say in the aftermath of further revelations. For example, there was a BBC Spotlight programme immediately after... I suppose I should rewind and say... to go back to the Good Friday 2024 when he was arrested. I remember in an interview with News Talk, the Dublin-based radio station, I said at the time, this isn't a political scandal. It's a personal scandal, and it's unlikely to affect power sharing that had recently been restored. So in fact, unlikely to destabilise things, because simply it's about personnel. The DUP can sideline Jeffrey. He immediately resigned from the party, immediately resigned his leadership, immediately resigned as an MP. And so it wasn't at the time a political scandal.
Which scandal are you talking about specifically?
The charges against him, the historical sex abuse charge.
So this is where the things that he was eventually found guilty for. This is where this comes into play now.
Yes, they first emerged when he was arrested in April 2024.
What exactly were those allegations?
Well, the allegations, that he sexually abused two young girls whose identities remain a secret due to the nature of the legal process. Those allegations have subsequently, the court case, etc. Jeffrey, on the 22nd of June, was found guilty. I think most importantly, he was found guilty on a rape charge and other sort of lesser charges of gross indecency and indecent assault.
Against children?
Against children. These, I think, the offences are thought to have been carried out in the late 1980s, early 1990s.
You thought at the time this was a personal thing, it's not going to affect the DUP?
Well, and nor did it. At the time,
yeah.
When I'm saying it, I'm referring to simply the fact that he'd been arrested and charged. It at the time, it didn't suggest any broader governance issues. I think everybody appeared surprised by what had happened. Okay, so Jeffrey Donaldson is convicted on the 22nd of June this year. He's taken away to Maghaberry Prison. He'll be sentenced in September. His wife, Lady Eleanor Donaldson, she faced what was called a trial of the facts because she was deemed mentally unfit to face a trial, but she has also been found, I'm not sure if it's a guilty verdict exactly, but she has found to have conspired and with her husband in these acts.
And she wasn't present in the court, was she?
She wasn't present in the court, no. So she's, found to have aided and abetted him, okay?
Yeah.
So, Jeffrey goes off to Maghaberry Prison, and then on the Friday, that was on the Tuesday, I believe, may have been the Monday, but later that week then BBC Spotlight airs a programme that they've been working on for the previous 12 months in which they have a member of the special branch, PSNI special branch, who says, recalls this incident where he's working over in MI5 headquarters in Whitehall, He walks over for him and a colleague walk over to the south of the river for something to eat one night to Vauxhall, and they're walking along the Thames, and who do they spy entering a gay sauna but Jeffrey Donaldson? So this is recounted, and it's seen as, the sort of thin end of the wedge in terms of illustrating that Jeffrey was leading a double life. Now, since then, there has been lots more rumour. I'm trying to think, you see, there's a lot of noise.
Yes.
And I'm trying to, actually think, well, what has actually been presented as hard evidence in this case? And there isn't that much, apart from in going to a gay sauna, but it's also stuff emerges then. Yes, also in the same program was that it turns out he's a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
And I think he maybe professed to be a teetotaler.
Right. Okay. There's a story that he projectile vomited onto the mayor of Beijing.
That's correct. Yes, and on an overseas trip.
But I'm sure that's not the only incident, from what I've heard.
It's important to point out just a few things about Jeffrey Donaldson. He that I've overlooked. It's important. He was a Privy Councillor, which means he is an advisor to the monarch. Right. So that's how close he is to the centre of power. He was, I think, he was appointed an overseas trade envoy then post-Brexit to Cameroon. He had all sorts of, he was in everything but the crib, really. He'd formed a company with his brother Kingsley, which sort of, promoted the peace process internationally, even though you recall me saying that the DUP or Sir Jeffrey Donaldson did not support the Good Friday Agreement. Yet they sort of monetised it, in many ways, and monetised the success of it. He was a member of a group, I think, that was founded by Lord John Alderdice, former leader of the Alliance Party. I think, if I can just find the name of it, the Centre for Democracy and Peace Building. So he would have been a director on that, along with the former SDLP leader Margaret Ritchie. So Jeffrey got about a bit, and was a man of influence. And yes, so he's overseas on this trip to, I think it was to Hong Kong, possibly, where he vomited over the mayor of Beijing. Other stories of him, coming, being seen in the House of Commons, purloining wine, with a bottle of wine in each hand, that he was leaving a gig, and he brought these off. They're taking these home with him. Tales of him, I think, maybe being a bit, shall we say, over-familiar with females. Talk of him sitting on one MLA's, an unnamed MLA, which is a member for the Legislative Assembly, so that's an elected representative, sitting on her lap, and that attention being unwelcome. These are tales. So, now, that's definitely, that points to a double life. This is someone who we thought was very sober, very sensible, but clearly, has a drink problem, and at times has got out of control. But beyond the stuff that he's been convicted for, no criminal behaviour. There is seemingly hypocrisy, but nothing criminal.
So currently Gavin Robinson is the leader of the DUP. How is he handling the fallout of this, and what's it done for the DUP? Well,
initially the DUP played it by the book and disowned Jeffrey Donaldson and condemned his behaviour. But that was limited, I suppose, to what he'd been convicted for. It was only afterwards, when the further revelations came out, and there was a sense that other people must have known about this behaviour, and known that Jeffrey Donaldson was leading a double life, but chose not to say anything about it. And this has, raised questions about, well, who within the DUP knew. There was also a revelation in the Spotlight programme where a woman who had worked as an intern for Jeffrey Donaldson, she was a grown woman, I believe, or about 19 at the time, had raised concerns about his behaviour. Okay, and I think she'd been maybe referred to as a victim in a text or whatever. This text went to Ian Paisley, and then Ian Paisley passed it on to Edwin Poots. So
Edwin was the leader.
This happened during the leadership contest between Edwin and Jeffrey, you see, and it was thought, well, you can use this, Edwin, as ammunition against Jeffrey. Okay. But that seems to have gone no further. People are saying, well, there are safeguarding issues there that weren't escalated and should have been by the then leader, or the subsequent leader, Edwin Poots, if he knew this about Jeffrey Donaldson. So there's a lot of there's not a lot of meat out there necessarily. We've mentioned
there's allegations, but nothing to back it up.
No. The woman at the centre of these allegations, who worked as an intern, has subsequently told the Belfast Telegraph that the now Deputy First Minister, Emma Pengelly, DUP Deputy First Minister, who it must be said was co-opted into Jeffrey Donaldson's assembly seat, that it's quite complicated. He ran for election in Lagan Valley as an MLA, but didn't take his seat because that would have involved him resigning his Westminster seat, and instead gifted it to Emma Little Pengelly, who is now the Deputy First Minister. It is claimed that she told this woman that Jeffrey Donaldson was a danger. Now, she has denied that. The Deputy First Minister has denied that and said that she is unaware of anything that suggests, or she denies knowing that Jeffrey Donaldson was leading a double life. Okay, so if we rewind, the DUP then found itself on the back foot, having to deal with all these. Well, who knew what? And as said, it's going to set up an internal review. Now, there was a bit of speculation that review would be led by former PSNI sort of safeguarding officer Jim Gamble. That is yet to be confirmed. Whether the review has begun, we don't know. So, meanwhile, the Sinn Féin is interjecting into the debate and calling, Michelle O'Neill was in Dublin yesterday and she was calling for Emma Little Pengelly, her co-First Minister, to be more transparent about what she knew. So, there is political pressure is building on the DUP from the Ulster Unionist Party. John Burrows is agitating on it. Alliance is also agitating on it. There's an expectation that they front up in regards to what has happened.
And what are these parties looking for, or are they just piling the pressure on in anticipation of an election because of Andy Burnham?
Well, it's hard. I think that, maybe like the rest of it, they just want some more salacious gossip, or at least that's substantiated. Yeah. No, they believe that there's no smoke without fire, and that the DUP needs to come clean about who knew what about Jeffrey Donaldson, because it seems extraordinary that nobody was aware of this double life.
Whenever I see something like this and there's a leader, my mind automatically goes into either they didn't know, in which case they should have known, or they did know and they were hiding something. So what's the type of pressure that Gavin Robinson is facing at the moment? Is there pressure on his leadership?
No. The last thing the DUP wants at the minute is any sort of leadership contest, having gone through, 4 leaders in the last decade.
And what about Edwin Poots? There's pressure on him.
Edwin Poots is Speaker of the Assembly, and that is a position which is meant to bring with it, integrity, and there is, questions have been asked about what Edwin Poots knew. Edwin Poots has made it clear that he hasn't done anything wrong and that there was no criminality involved, and that he's in the clear basically.
Yeah. Who's the political winners and losers? Well, losers obviously DUP, but who's the political winners in all of this?
There are different winners and different degrees. It will possibly most advantage the TUV, which is the Ulster Unionist Party traditional unionist voice, which, there are parallels between how the TUV agitates against the DUP and how the DUP once agitated against the Ulster Unionist Party when it was the mainstream unionist party. So the TUV...
More hardline.
Yes, hardline, yes. Opposed to power sharing, opposed to the Good Friday Agreement. Not necessarily opposed to power sharing, but opposed to the mandatory coalition that we have.
Led by Jim Allister.
Led by Jim Allister, a former member of the DUP, former DUP member of the European Parliament, who split from the DUP to form the TUV over the decision of Ian Paisley Senior to go into government with Sinn Féin.
They only have one seat in the Assembly?
They have one seat in the Assembly. Opinion polls would suggest, that they're polling around between 10 and 13%, which, should merit more seats, but they're not especially transfer friendly. And they lack, a sort of depth in squad, shall we say. Jim Allister, in what has to be said was a surprise move that many people didn't see coming, took the Westminster seat from Ian Paisley Jr. in 2024 and therefore had to resign his Assembly seat. We've seen Timothy Gaston co-opted in Jim's place, and for a single MLA, he's been quite effective. His is a sort of, shall we say, a disruptive role. And a critical role, so there's often he's coming into conflict with, other parties in the chamber and in committees and different things. So, but while he's very effective, yes, there is a sense that the TUV should have greater representation given where it is in the polling. But it's, as I say, there are various reasons for that. So, the TUV is probably the main beneficiary. The Ulster Unionist Party in a bit of internal disarray at the moment, but also John Burrows, the new leader, has been quite vocal on this, quite proactive, and will attempt to make as much political hay as he can from it. The Ulster Unionists stand to gain from, sort of a slightly more middle ground unionists who would see voting for the TUV as a bit of an anathema. And then, of course, there's nationalism. Now, nationalism won't gain votes from people disillusioned with the DUP, but what it will do is give nationalism an issue to latch onto and to agitate about. And you've seen that with Michelle O'Neill's comments in Dublin yesterday. So whereas the Sinn Féin could choose to say, look, this is an internal matter for the DUP, let them sort it out. I think what the Sinn Féin would look back to 2023, I think, and the scandal that saw its press officer convicted of soliciting underage sex, and a controversy that followed that, whereby he was then given employment references by the Sinn Féin's head of comms, who was forced to resign. And there was a controversy about that, and a famous incident where, in his new role as a press officer for the British Heart Foundation, Michael McMonigal, former Sinn Féin press officer, ended up in the Great Hall at Stormont, a matter of yards from Michelle O'Neill, who knew he was a suspected paedophile, but didn't think to tell his new employer that this guy is a suspected paedophile. And she, there are pictures, many widely circulated pictures, showing them, two of them within a matter of yards from each other, but Michelle O'Neill has claimed all along that she did not see him there that day. The rules are now reversed, because the DUP obviously was critical of Sinn Féin at the time, accusing it of turning a blind eye to paedophilia. There have been other previous child abuse scandals, one involving Gerry Adams' brother Liam, historically. As I say, the tables are now turned, and the Sinn Féin is using this issue to bring pressure on the DUP. As I say, they won't attract any votes from it, from disgruntled DUP voters, but it allows them to, shall we say, to call the tune, to lead the agenda, and it provides a bit of a distraction, because as some listeners may be aware, a key pledge of Sinn Féin in the north of Ireland during this mandate was to deliver Casement Park, a refurbished Casement Park. That's a Gaelic Athletic Association stadium in West Belfast. This was a flagship project of the Northern Ireland Executive, but it's been beset by trouble from the off, and it has emerged in recent days that it now must be scaled back to half the size as originally envisaged. This is a huge embarrassment to Sinn Féin, because it had invested so much political capital in it, and it has effectively come to nothing. But Sinn Féin has been absent from the airwaves, in the same way the GAA has been absent from the airwaves. Neither has come forward to explain their role, or to explain, what happens next in terms of this. And the Jeffrey Donaldson issue and the DUP, the upheaval within the DUP, the controversy within the DUP, is providing a convenient distraction that enables Sinn Féin to dodge the casement issue.
Wow. Also, we should say that this is we're facing the 12th of July, and traditionally Sinn Féin and a lot of other nationalists do vacate to the north, and so they might be on their holidays, a lot of them. Is that fair to say?
That's not fair to say, no.
Why?
No, because politics is 24/7, all week, and yes, they may use that as cover and say, sorry, we were all away on holidays.
But the show must go on. Yeah.
Yes, and they should put somebody forward to explain what the current situation regarding Casement Park is. And of course, Michelle O'Neill was in Dublin yesterday, where Sinn Féin were bringing forward their Irish Unity Bill in the Dáil.
What next for the DUP?
Well, I think they'll be glad of the 12th fortnight, as it's still called up here, though very few people enjoy a fortnight's holiday at this time of year. But there is generally a winding down, certainly of the broadcast media.
I should say this because we just assume everybody knows what the 12th of July is. 12th of July is, well, you talk about it.
Well, the 12th of July is an annual commemoration of the Battle of the Boyne, when the Protestant King William of Orange defeated the Catholic King James I at the Boyne, which is a river in the Republic of Ireland. That happened in 1690, and that's commemorated every year with orange marches. We have a complete season of marching, and this, I suppose, is the 12th of July is a highlight of that, and there are demonstrations, as they're called, held across Northern Ireland, and even a couple in the Republic of Ireland, one famously in Rossnarla in southern County Donegal. And those are preceded by 11-night bonfires, which generally take place in working class areas, working class unionist areas, and whereas Orangism in rural areas is seen as very often a temperance movement, very sober, very conservative. The bonfires are anything but. They are quite raucous affairs.
Yes. You were explaining what next for DUP.
So what next for DUP? Well, I think they'll try and ride this storm out. That depends on whether anything fresh comes out. As I say, there's been lots of speculation in some outlets. There's been saturation coverage with minimal substance to it. It really needs someone to come out and offer some fresh material, I believe. But throughout the summer, I imagine people will be asking the DUP, well, what of this review? When do you expect it to conclude? And then coming out of the summer, the DUP has its annual conference, I think around the mid to late September. So that again will bring great focus. If it goes ahead, will bring huge focus on the party. It really depends on how it plays this review. Does it come out? Does it come clean? Does it sacrifice a few individuals? And it's been suggested that if people do find themselves thrown under a bus, that they'll bring others with them. It is clear that I think that certain people knew more about Jeffrey Donaldson's double life than they're letting on. For example, I'll give you an example. We haven't mentioned him before. Sammy Wilson, once a very outspoken a DUP member of Parliament, famous for in the early 1990s, the Sunday World published photographs of him on a foreign holiday in France with his partner at the time, walking around in his birthday suit. So that there are the DUP for a party so aligned with fundamental Christianity has been dogged by sex scandals, throughout its history. Well, not throughout its history, but over the last 25 years.
Since Paisley stepped away, really.
He what? Sorry?
Since Paisley stepped away, really.
Yes. Although the Paisley was still when Sammy Wilson, when those pictures were published, but that's minor compared to the stuff that has since come. We've had a councillor in my own former head of what was Down District Council, again convicted for soliciting sex with someone underage.
I'm having a wry smile every time you talk about Sammy Wilson's escapades, because I remember at that time I was in the Empire in a pub quiz, and there was one of the teams is called Sammy Wilson in the Nip. So every so often that was being boomed out over the PA. It was kind of surreal.
But so I mentioned Sammy Wilson because he and Jeffrey had a flat together in London. Now, I think that's historical.
Yeah.
I can't say when they stopped having a flat together, it may have been 10 years ago. But for, several years, the two of them shared a flat together.
Because they're both MPs.
Yes. Now, if Jeffrey was leading a double life, if he had, gay lovers, if he was drinking a lot, it's stretching things to say that Sammy Wilson wasn't aware of this. But he may well have been.
Mm-hmm. In 50 years from now, how will people view this?
I think they will look back on it. It's that there has been no greater fall from grace, I don't think, in the modern political era. For someone, a leader of a political party, albeit a party with, a little more than a handful of MPs.
But they had this, the confidence and supply agreement with, so they were in a coalition government with the Tories. So they were a big player at that time.
They were.
So you'd say even a handful of MPs, very powerful.
Yes. No, at that time, I think they had 10 MPs. That's down to maybe 7. No, so the DUP is a party in decline. And this is perhaps you ask where it leaves the DUP. This is perhaps accelerated that decline. There's been talk of consolidation of unionism, of bringing the Ulster Unionists and the DUP together. I think that would, if anything, probably be postponed for a while until it's clear who is in the clear in terms of the DUP. I don't think the Ulster Unionist Party wants to get into bed with the DUP, if you excuse the expression, at this point, until we can be sure that the integrity of those individuals that they are going to cooperate with is surefire.
I'm guessing that could take it 1 to 2 years.
Yes. Yeah, well, I reckon I would think they want to get it cleaned up. We've an assembly election next May.
Yeah.
So they'll want it to be history by then. So it will be to their benefit to get it out of the way and get it concluded as soon as possible. So they can move on from that.
So in 50 years' time, they'll look at this here as one of those chapters of the biggest fall from grace in political.
Yes, and one would hope that in that time, with state papers and different things, a lot more detail around what has actually occurred, maybe clearer.
John Manley, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, Fender. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you know someone who might value this conversation, please feel free to pass it on. The Ireland podcast is intended as a record of long-form conversations like this, and if you would like to support the continuation of the work, there is a link in the notes. Take care.